Hey y'all, it's Brandy and welcome back to the Antisocials Library. We are going to go over my April reads. So, it wasn't a crazy month, that's for sure. I didn't read a lot, but I did read good things. There was some highs and there were some lows, okay? But there were more highs than lows, and that's really all that matters. So, let's just get into it. So I want to talk about the stats really quickly for us stats queens out there. So here are all the stats for the month of April. I read a total of 7 books, which was 2,909 pages, which I also, of that, either immersion read or listened via audio of 27 hours and 27 minutes. That 27 hours and 27 minutes isn't total. That's the audiobook length, and I listen to audiobooks at 2 point speed, 1.75 speed. So that's just the total because it's easier to get that number than it is to track how long I actually listen to an audiobook. Maybe one day I'll get there, but right now I just use the audiobook length. So I don't know how long I actually sat down and listened to an audiobook, but of the audiobooks I listened to, it totaled 27 hours and 27 minutes, and I will let you know which ones I listened to on audio and whether I recommend them. My average rating was a whopping 4.17, which is great. I'm really happy with that number. Like I said, the lows that I had were low, but there was only 2 of them. There were only 2 lows. So out of 7 books, that's pretty good. And actually, the average rating only includes 6 books because one of the books that I read this month was a memoir, and I don't rate memoirs. So that 4.17 is actually an average rating of 6 of my books. So the primary genre that I read this month was fantasy, by far, and then pretty much an even spread of everything else. I read horror, I read mystery thriller, I read contemporary literary fiction, and of course, I just mentioned, the memoir that I read. This is also something that I have been starting to want to track, and it's how I have received or the source of the book that I got. And right now I have it broken down into my book boxes and subscriptions. So Aardvark, Book of the Month, Illumicrate, that's it. Those are the 3. Those are the 3 book boxes that I have. And then I have a category for gifted, for any books that I was gifted. And then I have a category for purchased. And purchased doesn't mean that I purchased that book in that month. It just means that in general, I obtained that book by purchasing it. So whether it was 4 years ago that I purchased it or last week that I purchased it, that's kind of what that means. I do think that it would be interesting to track books that I have obtained in that month versus books that were already on my shelf. So like TBR books or new hauled books. So I might start tracking that in the future, but as of now, I just have whether I've purchased it, whether it was gifted to me, or whether I got it from a book box. And as you can see in the month of April, I read Aardvark books, Book of the Month books, and gifted books, but primarily I read the books that I bought, which I'm not upset about because I bought them, obviously. But yeah, that is short and sweet, to the point, the statistics for the month of April. 7 books is not a lot. I don't really have a whole lot of stats to back that up of different things that I am tracking, but I will have more stats going into the future because I want to know these things. I want to get into them. But I'm having this problem because I'm in the middle of the year that I don't know if my brain will allow me to just start in the month of May, or if I have to backlog my entire reading year into a spreadsheet. Do you know what I mean? And I also just get decision paralysis with all of the amazing apps out there. I mean, obviously everyone knows about Goodreads and Storygraph, and Storygraph has really good stats. I really like that a lot. And I like that in Storygraph you can tag your own and create your own statistics from it. So you can tag it as an Aardvark book. You can create a tag that says Aardvark, and then in your statistics page on Storygraph, you can see everything that's tagged as Aardvark, if that makes sense. So there's a way to do it in Storygraph, but then I see things like Pagebound and Fable, and everybody has their own statistics, and I don't know. And then I know a lot of people do their own statistics with their own spreadsheets, and I have spreadsheets that I have either purchased or made for book tracking. I just haven't followed through with actually utilizing them for the good that they can be. So I don't know, I just have decision paralysis. So if you want to let me know how you track your reading, or if you track your reading at all, and maybe I'm just being ridiculous, because that is always a possibility when you were talking to me. So there is that. But those are the statistics, and now let's just get into the books. I feel like this will be relatively short and sweet video because I don't have a whole lot to say about a lot of these books. I think I'm just gonna go from chronologically what I read first up until I read last, and then I'll get into some kind of like superlatives, like best, worst, most surprising, stuff like that. So the first book that I read in the month of April was Buffalo Hunter Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. This is my aardvark book. I deeply obsessed with this book. I ended up giving Buffalo Hunter Hunter, the Buffalo Hunter Hunter, 4.5 stars. I loved this so much. This did take me a little bit to get into, but once I got into it, I ended up having a really good time with it and really enjoying where the story went. And it's a horror book, a horror vampire book that is kind of following a story being told within a story being told within a story. So you're following a woman in modern day, and she finds her like great grandfather's journal, and in this journal this man is talking about this Indian vampire who he met, and you're kind of seeing the story unfold about the vampire through the journal of this man. And the whole time you're kind of, for a lot of the book, you're kind of going, is he really a vampire, or is he like just a killer, or is he just trying to freak this guy out, or whatever? And as the story unfolds, you have this like really eerie, creepy feeling about this vampire, but also like you're rooting for him at the same time, because the reason he does what he does just feels so justified in the way that Stephen Graham Jones wrote this. This was incredible. It had a fantastic commentary, and I would highly recommend. And also the cover is incredible. So there is that. The next 3 books I read were for my Shelf It or Stake It episode 1 video, which is my rendition, which is my take on a read it or on haul it type video, where I randomly picked these books out of my cauldron of full TBR. And in case it's literally your first video, it's actually a cauldron. Like, I actually have a cauldron full of all the physical books on my TBR, and I pick from here, and whatever book I get, I have to read it or unhaul it. Or in this case, read it and then possibly still unhaul it after I've read it. So let's get into it. The first one I picked up was Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. This one was really fun. We're following a girl who is going back to her small town where this horrible tragedy happened, which some people say is an overused trope, and I understand your take. I understand why you think that, but I do think you're wrong, because I can't stop myself from picking up a book that follows a girl going back to her small town that she doesn't want to go back to after something horrible happens. I just think that that is a fantastic trope, and you are definitely doing that in this story. But in here, you're also getting the twist of there is a podcast that is following this girl and this girl's life because she was accused of killing her best friend. That is that awful thing that happened, and why she left her hometown in the first place is she was accused of killing her best friend. And now this podcast has surfaced and is kind of resurfacing that trauma for her, so she goes home to just get to the bottom of it. And this podcast is also there in her small town, and they're kind of almost working together to see like what actually happened, because she doesn't have any memory of that night, so she doesn't actually know if she did it. And that is the premise. And the audio, but this is one of the ones I listened to on audio. The audiobook for this was incredible. The production was so good. It gives that podcast element, and when you're hearing the podcast element, you are actually hearing it as a podcast. Like, the mic changes, and there is intro music when the podcast starts and outro music when it ends, and like to let you know you're going back to the narrative. It's really good, really creative. The story was good. I kind of saw where it was going, but like I almost didn't care because of how enthralled I was with the story. I read it very quickly. I listened to it in one day, and I ended up giving this a 4-star. So I did shelf this one. I did keep this one. The second book I picked for Shelf It or Stake It was Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent. This is book 1 in the, what is it called? The War of Lost Hearts series. And this one was one that I wasn't super stoked to have picked immediately, but I grew super stoked pretty quickly. Like at first when I read it, I was like, oh no. Not because I wasn't excited to read it, but because it's almost like an intimidating thing to start a whole new fantasy series. And I love Carissa Broadbent's writing, and I know that already because I have read Crowns of Nyaxia series, and I thoroughly enjoy that series. But this series came highly recommended as well. But I just had that like feeling, you know, of like, oh no, another fantasy series. But I did go into this and I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I gave it 4 stars. You are following, again, very tropey fantasy tropes where our main character is a badass woman who is seen as weaker or and has to prove herself, and she goes to this magical place where she has to prove her magical abilities in order to get help to go back to her hometown, or her home world where her people are in need. So, and she is at this place trying to prove her worth in order to get that help, and an entire story unfolds just from that one little premise. Like that premise is like this much of the story, you know what I mean? And it was really, really, really good. It kept me enthralled the entire time. And again, I just love Carissa Broadbent's writing. I love the way that she shows the characters going through what they're going through, and the way that she describes it is so deep but also surface level, like at the same time, where you're reading it really quickly and it's like really easy to ingest, but at the same time you're like, whoa, I felt that. You know what I mean? But yeah, I gave this 4 stars, and I will be continuing in the series, and I did shelf this. So I guess that does kind of spoil it for the next one. But the next one I picked up was Before I Forget by Tori Henwood Hohen. And this one I also listened to on audio, and it also didn't take me very long to read it. It was very short. The audiobook was short. The audiobook quality was good. I will give it that. But the story of this... So when I pulled this out of the cauldron, I think I even said in the video that I expected to be gut-wrenched. I expected like to cry and to feel deep sorrow, because the premise of this book is you are following this daughter as she goes home to take care of her father, who she's estranged from, after he develops Alzheimer's. So she takes on this responsibility to go home and be a caretaker to her father, who, again, she recently, like before he got sick, was estranged from. And that journey of his kind of coming to end of life while she's being a caretaker. And you would think, hearing that story, hearing that premise, that you would get a lot of heart-wrenching, gut-turning sadness, or at least complexity in the story, and that did not happen in this book. It didn't. She was the luckiest caretaker in all of the world, in my personal opinion, because she went home to take care of her father with Alzheimer's. And I don't personally have experience taking care of someone with Alzheimer's in my family, but I have had experience being a caretaker for a parent who has had trauma and memory issues. And this, I didn't feel like was an accurate representation of that at all. The father was incredibly goofy almost, and he was like in a good mood all of the time. Like his like little quirky moments where his memory loss would come through in the story would be like he wouldn't put on his like shirt, or he put on the wrong shirt, or he wouldn't remember the neighbor's name. It was nothing like I thought it was going to be, where, because it's like really hard and really difficult and really emotionally straining and awful, and can really test you as a human being at your core to be in the situation that she's in. And I didn't feel that come through at all. And then at the basics of the story, literally at the basis of the story, she uses her father's memory loss as a way to bridge the gap between realms, and he like becomes like a tea leaf reader, and people come to him for like readings. I don't know. I hated it. I didn't like it at all. I ended up giving it a 2.75, but I think that's generous now that I'm thinking about it. I think this is easily a 2-star read, 1.75. I will probably adjust my rating just because I like genuinely didn't like this, and I didn't like the representation. And maybe that was the author's way of bringing in positivity into this situation, and if that was the case, then I think that she accomplished that. But I mean, in my opinion, I didn't get what I was expecting to out of this story, and I don't think that it was an accurate representation of the trauma and the turmoil that can come from being in the position of our main character. Like, she just like took on this role, and then it was perfectly fine ever since. And I think that's crazy. I am definitely staking this. I'm unhauling this. And then I read my nonfiction of the month, which was my memoir. This is The Many Lives of Mama Love by Laura Love Hardin. This was my other not great read. So kind of for similar reasons, actually, in terms of representation. This is one that I can't necessarily speak to in terms of her experience, because this is a memoir, this is her experience. But in this story, she is telling her life and how she went from a like PTA soccer mom to a really hard-hitting opioid and drug addiction and theft and going to prison, and how she's reformed herself from prison and making her life out again afterwards. I personally hated this. I hated it. If I did rate memoirs, I would give this a 1-star. I thought that she really leaned on perception rather than like self-acceptance. Like, the whole point of the novel was to show like I've overcome these awful things that I have put myself into, but she quite literally never acknowledges the fact that she is the one that put herself in these situations. It's almost a kind of toxic mindset when you're talking about someone with an addiction and writing a novel that could appeal to a lot of people with addiction. I mean, a big thing about that is self-acceptance and coming to terms with the fact that you do in fact have an addiction and that you are the person that are making the choices that you're making in your life. And she just puts so much off of that, and she's just like, oh, this is how society made me, these are the choices that I had to make because of the situation I was in, and then afterwards this is how people viewed me. And I just didn't like that discourse at all. I thought it was lazy, to be honest with you. And then you get the ending where she is talking about how she's built up this entire company, and she does have a company that does great work inside the prison systems for women who are in prison, and how they can continue to work after they get out of prison. That foundation is an incredible idea, but she's talking about how she built this up, and she was only able to do so because of like all of her hard work and all of the things that she has gone through. But once again, she never acknowledges the fact that she is the one that put herself in that position in the first place. And I just think that's a really big, important missing piece when talking about this topic. So I didn't rate it because I don't rate memoirs, but if I did rate it, it would be low, and I am unhauling it. Oh my gosh, okay, so the next one I finally read. I finally finished it. I finished Kingdom of Copper by S.A. Chakraborty. Go me. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I gave this a 4.75. This is the sequel to City of Brass and the second in the Daevabad trilogy, the third one being Empire of Gold, which I will be getting to relatively soon, I hope, because this ended in a way that I need to know what happens. The ending of this book literally was like, oh no, I kind of want to drop all of my responsibilities and read the third one right now. But this is following our main characters who are living in a magical kingdom that is hidden from humans, and they kind of have their own political intrigue. And don't want to go too much into the plot because it is the second book in the series, but you brought back so many characters and so many full circle things happened in this book that honestly were so well written and built up so well that the anticipation of flipping to the next page just really got me. I don't know why this took me so long to read. I was in the middle of this book for like 2 months. And I don't know why, because I was loving the first half and I loved the second half. I just stopped for like no reason. So I don't know what that was about, but this was absolutely a 4.75. This was so good. So far, the David Bed trilogy is hidden, you know. And the last book that I read in the month of April was Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wong, which, you know, oh my goodness. This book was so good. This is easily a 5-star book for me. It is a standalone fantasy where you are following our main character, Siona, and she is the first ever high mage in this world. She's the first ever female high mage in this world, and she is kind of thrown into this secret of high magistry, and she has to juggle with what she wants to do with that knowledge, because she at her core is a very selfish and personally driven person who wants to just have high success and mean something in this world. And she thought she has done that by being the first female high mage in this realm, but then she has this knowledge that she's gained and she doesn't know what to do with it. And during this process she meets this janitor named Tomlin, who also learns the truth, and she has to kind of navigate that with him, and maybe possibly a budding romance happening there. And this book was just honestly kind of life-changing. Not to be dramatic, but I think this book changed my life just a little bit because it was insanely written. It's crazy to me that this is a standalone because, and also not as long as I think, like, I would imagine a story with this amount of impact would be, but it is absolutely a gorgeous piece of literature. And I don't want to go too much into the plot other than what I said, because I genuinely think you just need to jump into this and just take it as it comes, because it's so good. 5 stars. Absolutely 5 stars. All right, so I do think that it's pretty easy to see what was my favorite book of the month. It is absolutely Blood Over Brighthaven. That is my favorite book of the month. That is my highest rated book of the month. I'm gonna go with my most surprising book to be Listen for the Lie, actually, because this one, it's just really hard for me to get a mystery thriller kind of to shock me or to like make me as engaged as it is. I just read so many of them, and this one really actually kept me going. It kept me reeled in the whole time. So this one is definitely the most surprising. The most disappointing is obviously, before I forget, again, I hyped this book so much up in my, I hyped this book up so much in my head, and then when I got to it, it was just severely disappointing. I did not like the execution of the story at all. My favorite cover of the month is probably a tie between Blood Over Brighthaven or Buffalo Hunter Hunter, because I'm obsessed with this. I genuinely think this actually might be it. But I also thoroughly enjoy Blood Over Brighthaven as well, if you can actually see it without the glare. But I think I'm gonna go with Buffalo Hunter Hunter because, I mean, and the spine, you know? Yeah, that's definitely the one. My least favorite cover, and it's not because I hated it this much, I promise. It's not because I hated it. I don't like this. I don't like this cover. Sorry. Like, I don't. I think it is bland, I guess, is the word that I would use. But I'm not a huge fan of this one. But yeah, these are the 7 books that I read in the month of April, and I think I'm okay with this reading month. I'm pretty happy with it. I read 7 books and I'm happy with that. It's not as much as I would like to read, but I kind of knew going into the month of April that I wouldn't be reading as much as I would want to be. So, which is why I didn't even play the monthly bite for April. But I think going forward I will be knocking a few more books out than this, I think. I hope, for the game's sake anyway. But yeah, let me know if you have read any of these books or what your reading wrap up for April looks like. I would love to talk about it down below. If you don't have anything else to say while you're down there, but you want to let me know that you made it this far, you can go ahead and leave me anything magic-y. Anything magically, a wand or a wizard or a witch, or I don't know what's down there that's magically, but anything magically, leave that down below and we can talk about Blood Over Brighthaven together. And while you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe, and you can hit that little notification bell to be notified the next time that I post. And just remember to read well and rest well, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.